can you pass it?
You wouldn't have had a chance
Some
to
photos, yeah.
be this way to reach that goal like you girls. It's really nice. You think you're just little children here. You're just seems to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Ready? Ready? Good afternoon. Welcome to the Tunnganarniq show. My name is Margaret Nixana. We are broadcasting live here in Inuvik at the Inuvialuit Communication Society. Sorry. Today we are going to be meeting with my auntie, Agnes Gruben, and we are in this episode we are going to be going over storytelling, and I'm really, really excited.
I hope so.
Yeah. How are you, Auntie?
Oh, fine, thank you.
Yeah. I thought we could talk about your life and how it used to be living in the old way and hearing some stories, because I know that you are a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, thank you. What do you think so? Well, the way I am, who I am, I was born in Nulloch. 1937, September 11. I was born in a tent, the next day into the log house. And that's where I was born.
And Nulloch is north of?
North of Tuck, about 130 miles.
130 miles?
Yeah, northeast of Tuck. And when I was born, my grandparents were also in Nulloch. My uncles and aunts. They were all in Nulloch. From there, how long, I don't know, we stayed, and as far as I remember and come to, I remember my mom we were over in Kiglavak, and my grandmother said your mom is going to arrive with the baby. I just wanted baby, and I looked out the land. Here there were people along the close to the water. They were having a reindeer roundup at the time. But anyway, back to where I was born. My mother was Persis Gruben. My dad was Charlie Gruben. My dad was a hunter and trapper. My mother was raising all the children, I'd say. So that's how it all started. But back to my sister, where she was born. In between there was John, my brother, that I really didn't know. But he was born in Aklavik, in the hospital.
Okay.
But as I remembered, Mabel being born, I looked out the land, and my grandmother said to me, your mom is having a baby. Having a baby? Just kind of, I don't know what she meant. And I looked out here, there were all kinds of animals out there close to the beach. What are they? They're reindeers. I don't know what reindeers were. To me, they're tuk-tuk.
Yeah.
And my dad took me up there, and here they were chasing all these reindeers it's a corral. And people were wrestling with the reindeers, whatever they were doing, and I was curious, so I asked my dad, what are they doing? And he said they're castrating the bulls. And I didn't know what he meant. So I just mean nosy, eh?
Yeah.
But anyhow, I watched them, and there was people all over from Aklavik and all the settlements, and you could see there's different nationalities that were there looking at the reindeers, herding them through this corral. And I went back to the boat and back to reindeer. It was hot that day. And when I got there, my grandmother said, do you have a baby sister? Baby sister? Here was Mabel.
Mabel's my nana, my late nana. Yeah.
Yes, Mabel Jean
Mm-hmm.
Gruben. Yeah, that was her. And as the months went by, the winter came, and so my dad ended up building a little house by Tunnganarniq, which is straight across from Tunnganarniq Bay. That's where my granny raised few of her siblings after my grandfather died, John William Gruben, which he was a Hudson Bay manager for years and years, retired as Hudson Bay Severance in Kitty. And from there she raised a few of them, and so it was a little lagoon, and we were right close to the mouth of it, and Mabel started sitting up. It was cold winter. As I remember, Mom says to me, let's go get some wood. And John was just a little boy, and telling John, you watch your sister very closely. We're going to go get some wood across a point there. Okay, we did. And my dad and Fred Carpenter were out to Awalialuk, which is on the other side of Tunnganarniq, trapping up that way. And my Aunt Ada was expecting Margaret then. So that summer also he went to Banks Island, and that fall Margaret was born, and we went. Susie asked my dad if he could, with the family, go out trapping with her, because her husband just passed on, Fred Wilkie. So my dad said, okay, and we went, and our first landing was Blue Fox Harbor. Huge. I thought the land was so high, after being in Tuckan.
Yeah.
It's not as high, it's all fjords like. So we ended up for the winter there, and
Where's Blue Fox Harbor?
Blue Fox Harbor is west of Sachs Harbor.
Oh.
It's a 1 day's drive with dogs, maybe 6-8 hours. It isn't that far. But if you have fast team, probably 3-4 hours.
Okay.
And so we wintered there, and we're all settled for the winter. And 1st of November, people always get ready for trapping. Before then, they start gathering seals for their dog food. Go to the open water. And that morning, there was Abraham, Dad, Old Man Randy, and Jim Cockney, the Kalualub, actually. They went out, and Mom says to me, the wind is quite strong. There's some big black clouds over the water. Maybe your dad and them are drifted out. I said to my Mom, what does she mean by drifted out? When it's strong wind, sometimes the ice that's close to the beach could drift the whole thing right out to the ocean. Go out there and see if there's 2 men coming or a dog team. I keep looking, nothing. Finally, with binoculars, I was quite little. Our neighbors, the Raddy's family, Jim Ikalualuk family, Lucy, and Jim Wilkes family were walking distance. They were our closest neighbors. And Susie and Mom were in one house. It was a little house, but you winter there, you have no choice. There's no wood over there in Banks Island. So by this time, my Mom said, go out and look, see if your dad and Abraham are coming back. I looked, and finally I said, Mom, there's 2 people coming. My Mom said, see if they're with dog team or something if they got a pack on. So I went out with the binoculars, and as I went out, I looked. I said, Mom, I went back, they have no dogs, but they're packing something.
Mm-hmm.
And Nanny, I could see Nanny's face, she was worried. And she said, oh, that must be their harness for their dogs. Otherwise they got nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
So they finally came back, and my mom was all excited. Of course, everybody's afraid that they made it home at least saved.
Mm-hmm.
And when he got home, my dad and Abraham told what had happened. He said they were out there on the open water, and all of a sudden, no warning, I said, the open water, the ice just started flowing out.
Mm-hmm.
They had no choice but their dogs and their sleds. And there was those two men, the three men I told you. There was Jimmy Khalualuk, old man Rada Kwiksak, and Abraham Carpenter, and my dad, Charlie Gruben. So as fast as the wind was, the ice floating away, my dad unhitched all the dogs. So was the other men. They unhitched their dogs from the harnesses.
Mm-hmm.
My dad said he was paddling as fast as he could. The homemade little canoe, the skin was out of a bearded seal. See how small that canoe is? Because
Yeah.
the bearded seals are only about 8, 10 feet, the biggest.
Mm-hmm.
That's how big that kayak was.
And Dadak was a...
Dad was a paddler.
Yeah.
And he brought a Raddy first.
Mm-hmm.
It was getting rough. And then Jim Ikhalugaluk told him, sit on the front of the canoe so we don't capsize.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what he did. He said his hands were so cold, they were just numb.
Mm-hmm.
And asked Raddy, you want to go out and get Abraham? He said the ice was drifting out so fast, and the dogs were howling, want to get back to the beach, follow them. And they were afraid, I suppose, the dogs. They were just howling, but they were all out of their harness.
Mm-hmm.
So Raddy was so afraid, he started to cry, and my dad said, oh heck, I guess I have to, excuse my language, I'll have to go get him. He was getting further and further. So he told Abraham, don't make a move, it's too rough now. Otherwise we'll both go in the water and drown.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they came back, when Nanny told me to look for people walking. But they said when they looked back, all the dogs were just howling in that ice flow that's drifting away.
Yeah.
None of the dogs came back, I think, except for one woolly dog, the wheel dog of Jim Ikhalualuk.
Yeah.
That's all that came back.
They all went out in the ocean.
Well, perhaps that's what happened. None
Yeah.
of them came back.
Hmm.
So that's how I remember what it is to be so dangerous to be drifted out. Sometimes it's no return for men that's out there hunting.
Yeah.
Here it was just about November 1st, trapping season.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if it was fall time.
It was right before November 1st, that's when they started trapping.
Mm-hmm.
My dad had no dogs, nothing. How was he going to go out trapping with no dogs?
Yeah.
And Michael was there with us also. I had a house, Susie had a house full. And Fred Carpenter had 6 pups. They're 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
So being with Ada, his wife, which is Dad's sister, he sent 6 pups to my dad to train
Yeah.
for his dog team. No leader. But somehow he managed
Yeah.
through the winter. And that's how I remember how dangerous it was.
Yeah.
With my dad teaching me, and my mother was, so afraid all the time what's going to happen, and she was always caretaker at home for all her children, and it makes you wonder how we're going to make it. But that's how it is. And they made it through the winter. We did. And next following year, we came, when ice break up, then right before it breaks up, everybody painting their schooners inside out, just like a brand new schooner that's been bought from the factory.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just from the top to bottom. Every little inch of the schooner was painted. Fresh.
Dadek had his own schooner too?
At the time, he didn't.
Oh, okay.
We went with Susie. It's called a schooner Nanoaluk.
Oh, okay.
So we came back to mainland. And after mainland, we came back to Tuktoyakto. From there, my grandparents asked my dad to go with them back to Banks Island. My dad said, okay, Mom and Dad. Well, they couldn't stay away from Mom, I guess, his dad. So we went from one boat to the other to Reindeer, which is, we call it Tunnganarniq, reindeer in Eskimo, old reindeer in Eskimo. We pitched up tent. It was right in Lenny Harbor. We call it Lenny Harbor. We had some 2x4s for tent frame. They set up a tent frame. It was 2 tents. They put together 10 by 14 or 10 by 12. Well, there's how many families? My grandmother had 2 daughters, and how many uncles? No, 3 daughters. And there was Sam, Timothy, Edward, and Fred. And my grandparents. So it was our family was my parents, John, Mabel, Frank. There was 3 of them, 4 of them, 4 with me. And they put these tents together, so both families had one corner from the wall to the other side, my grandparents, and my parents on the other side, and stove in the middle. But they always have window up on the ceiling. This is like having your power, keep the tent warm and everything before everything is closed in. When the ice is thick enough in the bay, my grandfather, Sam, and my dad would go down there, and those old big saws, I don't know if you know that, the old saw types, they take that and they start sawing 4 inches of ice. 4 feet, maybe a little bigger, 4 feet by 6 feet. And they go down there, saw all day, and then with dogs they would haul it on a flatbed hot sled. They start putting the ice around the tent frame. When it's all done, the slush cracks up ice, make sure they're all even. And when that's all done, they put rafters, and if we don't have any moss close by, they have enough deerskin, they put deerskin. Or if they don't have that, they have snow blocks and moss also, like I said. And they set all that up, and for porches, they build up porches for the food, for food that can keep frozen, like flour and stuff like that. And for fresh meat, and for third one, they have it for like cornmeal and stuff for the dogs. So that's how I remember, because my grandfather and my dad would go out trapping. They would be gone for about 3 weeks to a month out there, dog team.
Trapping.
Yeah, and I used to wonder why so long, and Mom would start cooking beans, these kidney beans. And I asked her, what's that for? She said, for your dad's trail.
Oh.
So they cook beans and put a lot of bacon in there, and lots of bannock, and It's easier for them to thaw out when they stop. And
Yeah.
primer stove, it's not the primer stove that we use nowadays. It was only Coleman stove, a little stove.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough to put one pot and just warm one little dish at a time, unless you have two primer stoves.
Yeah.
And if they didn't have any tent, they always had mostly snow houses
Yeah.
to camp for the night. Maybe every 50 miles, maybe more so.
Igloos?
In between, yeah.
Yeah.
They built igloo out of certain type of snow, which is hard.
Yeah.
And Dada was making the snow houses.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather with his help.
He knew how to do them.
Pardon?
Dad of Charlie knew how to do them.
Oh yes,
to
he
make
was
them?
professional at
Yeah.
making snow houses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of take a machete
Yeah.
and they start poking into the snow. And if it's sugary, so that's no good.
Yeah.
Till they hit the real fine, close, tight form of snow.
Mm-hmm.
He said, oh, this would be good for a snow house.
Yeah.
And they start building their snow house.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've experienced that, and one night after my dad came back, I wanted to go with him. One night, trap line. So from there, he said, okay, Bonnie, you can come along. We went there for all day, it seems like, with dogs. And we come to this igloo. Said, this is where we're going to sleep tonight. For me, it was kind of strange, because I think he is watching me closely. There's no bed. We're going to sleep on the snow, on the floor there, but we're going to put the deerskin in sleeping bags.
Yeah.
And after he tied all the dogs up, fed the dogs, I said, okay, we're going to go in there now, throw the deerskin mattress and our blankets, and light the primer stove that I was telling you. It's not the big primer stove, it's a little Coleman stoves.
Yeah.
We're going to have something to eat and we're going to go to bed. I said, okay. I keep looking around. I thought it was going to be cold. You know, they have one, they put a little vent because you get suffocated if you don't have an air hole, eh?
Yeah.
Those primer stoves. And a candle. Those old wax candles for
Yeah.
light.
Yeah.
So we went into bed and I fell asleep. That was a good sleep I had next morning. Dad said, my dad, it's time to get up, honey, we've got to go home. So that was, for me to sleep in an igloo was something different.
Do you remember how old you were?
I was 9, I just turned 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Between 8 and 9, at the time when we landed to Lenny Harbor.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, time for us to go home. We never felt any cold because we always had all skin for parking.
Yeah.
Inside party was skin, if not it was all down feathers. But thin layer of deerskin for inside. The outside was a little bit thicker but double parkas.
Mm-hmm.
And for the legs we had mucklucks and we had mitts, either deerskin legs or wolf mitts.
Nanny used to make all of that.
They did.
Yeah.
After they hunt all summer,
Yeah.
dry the caribou skins.
Mm-hmm.
Month of July and August, that's when the best time of the year for clothing for the summer.
Yeah.
As you go along, they start getting a little thicker September, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when I see them hunting and drying deer skins,
Yeah.
caribou skins, I should say.
Nanny must have always been sewing.
Yeah, and she would dry them, and she starts scraping them,
Mm-hmm.
getting ready for winter.
Yeah.
The lakes, mucklucks, parkas, we call them adigi,
Mm-hmm.
out of park and inside liner.
Mm-hmm.
And from there on, my mom would make all that winter clothes for all of us. And we never felt cold.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have these commercial made clothing. We had nothing. We had no choice.
Nanny used to pluck
All the geese.
and save the down.
Yeah, save the down. The outer thick feather. Mom would make a mattress.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And save the down for parkas and for traveling weather pants. And then make regular blankets with the down.
Yeah.
So we never felt cold on our pillows. We never knew what cold was because we always had deerskins for clothing.
Yeah.
And towards springtime comes along, and we had sealskin mucklucks and sealskin parka. My dad did. I never felt cold. Well, we had no rubber boots or hip waders or these snowpack shoes.
Yeah.
You just can't go to the store, and I didn't even know what they were because all we ever wear was mucklucks.
Yeah.
Sealskin.
Nanny knew how to chew.
Oh, that's all she ever did was... I used to wonder, why is my mom chewing all the time for the bottom of our shoes?
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I realized, she said, take the skin out. She cut a square size for a size 8 for my dad, measured with the hand, reach over.
Yeah.
She said, cut that into square from that bearded seal hide. She said, take an ashes and with a dull scraper, or a not sharp one, no. She said, take all that fur out. Make sure it's all taken out, the fur. I said, okay. But when it's time to, she says, when you're going to scrub that ashes off, make sure, because if you don't scrub that ashes, you're going to lose your teeth in no time.
Oh.
It's ashes, eh?
Yeah.
So if you don't scrub it off with soap and brush, you leave a lot of sediments of the ashes, and it just kind of grinds your teeth down to nothing.
Yeah.
So one day I did that. I was in a hurry with one pair, bottom, and she got mad at me. She says, look here. See, this is what I mean. She said, she pointed at her mouth. Look, full of ashes on my teeth. It says, wear out your teeth faster.
Yeah.
I said, oh, okay. Had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And I never knew what rubber boots were till we were a certain age, because you don't go to the store and say, I'm going to the store and buy a pair of rubber boots for spring. So we never had that.
Yeah.
Because we're gone away for a whole year, maybe better. We leave there from mainland, middle of August. We get to Banks Island just right on September, October. Everybody find a place to settle, west or east. So people just strung out on the coastline. And that's how I was raised over in Banks Island.
I talked about this previously with another guest, but I was saying how my Nana remembers when going up to Banks Island, when I remember she said that when you came off the schooner, when it reached shore, she said that all the kids go and look for little plants, kunaliks. Yeah, she said it was like candy, where everyone could eat them.
Yeah,
kids.
that's what we used to do. This time of the June, that's when all the flowers and all the animals start coming back and everything else, and the flowers start blooming in June. And we'd go, kunalik time. There's a name for them, but it's got a lot of acid, so we used to just pick them all up and then boil them, a lot of sugar and with a thin broth of flour
Yeah.
and water.
Mhm.
So that makes it kind of milky looking, and that's good.
Yeah.
That's what we used to eat. I couldn't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we had our own greens,
Mhm.
and the long ones we used them for our greens. We used to put them in oil,
Mhm.
bearded seal oil,
Mhm.
or when we come to mainland, we put them in oil.
Mhm.
And that's how I remember picking up, picking up the greens
Yeah.
of tundra.
Mhm.
Besides this time of the year, like right now, it's berries.
Yeah. I remember you say, and I say it a little bit different. Can you guys do it?
Gidialuit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't know if I could say it like you can. It uses a different part of your throat and your tongue.
You use your guttural.
Yeah.
Gidialuit. Kind
Um,
of like your tongue.
I-
Gidialuit. Yeah.
I don't know if I can say it. But I've always heard stories of people who have talked about it, but I've never heard any stories personally of people who have lived there. Have you lived there before?
No, I never lived there. That's where my dad was raised.
Oh,
There was
okay.
10 siblings. See, my grandfather came in from Switzerland. I got his original papers. He came from Switzerland. He kind of roamed around all over and ended up came in with the boats out into Alaska. Married a lady from there in Kaktoik.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandfather always told my dad that he's got a half-sister named Panikpak. And all the years I've been in Alaska, I've been kind of following Panikpak Trail. And just before I got to reach Panikpak, my dad's half-sister, and my dad always said he would love to meet her. And I guess she married Fred Gordon. Because when my grandfather was coming this way, meantime he was married, he had a house in the mouth of Kuparuk with their second child, his wife, passed away. So he left Panikpak with her grandparents and came into Gidialuit side. When he came out this way, he was the first Hudson Bay manager in Gidialuit, looking after all the people there. There was abundance of people at the time, before the flu ever came in. Yeah. And so that's, in his reports, he always said he'd check all people from the west and east to see how their trapping is, and everybody's all fine and doing fine for trapping season. And he was busy, I suppose, all this time with the people being around there. People had their own ways of living, but the people kind of more or less to themselves at Gidialuit. They were one tribe.
Yeah.
They were the tribe themselves as Inuvialuit. There was no others. So we're all Inuvialuit. Others came in on later, was from Alaska, called Ummaramute. We call them Ummaramute. They came in later. Around between Herschel and Aklavik or Shingle Point, they call them Duyomet. The same language, but at the high pitch tone was a kind of a high in their ending of their sentence. But they were just like in a different tribe. In every part of Yukon and on the coastline to Herschel, there was all different group of Inuvialuit. Till Ummaramute came in and took over Delta.
Okay.
It used to be at one time where people from Tuk used to go in there to Ummak to trap muskrats. After they finish their trapping around Tuck, March, they go in May and June to trap in Delta. I know my dad did. He caught abundance of muskrat. And people kind of fought over whose land they wanted, and they would call them, same as Alaskans, BLM, land grabbers. There was also land grabbers.
Yeah.
But Tuck were not fighting people. They just let them in.
Yeah.
But the only one that I really well know was when Naloga Whitefish Station, they call it right now. When Malmute came in, then Gidiyayuit people told them, you can use Naloga for hoiling summer, but keep it clean. It's our land. That's what they told these Malmute people. So, same token that they were alone for that Naloga. And that's the way I know it, because my grandmother would, and my dad would tell the stories.
Yeah.
We're not mixed breed at the time. It was straight Inuit.
Yeah. So Dad, like Charlie comes from the Inuit.
Oh yes, my dad is true Inuit through my grandmother.
Yeah.
Mary Dalomech. And my grandfather was other from Switzerland, so.
Yeah. That's why he was so tall.
Hey?
That's why he was so tall.
Yeah. He must have been a very tall person.
I think he was like 6 feet.
Over
6 feet.
Yeah.
Dad and Charlie.
Because my dad is 6'2".
Yeah.
So that's where all the tallness of the people came. The Europeans.
Yeah. We can talk about like living in Tuck. Do you remember what year you and Nanny and Dada moved to Tuck?
Well, Tuck didn't. After the big flu they had in Gidiyayuit, 1934. People start. Mamilaluk already moved there, and there was Eddie's adopted parents had a house there, up on the hill where his log house is. And there was a log house where Nasugalaka used to be owned by somebody else. Excuse me. And well, when the Hudson Bay closed down 1934 from Gidiyayuit, my dad took all the staff house, the warehouse. There was another little house down to Tuck. And they thought, coming through the back lagoon, they thought it was a harbor. They got sandbarred, so they waited for a day or so, and they came out of it, and they came around the corner of, you know where the point is? And they came into the harbor, and that's where they unloaded all the, right at the end of the point, all the warehouse, staff house, and the little house.
Yeah.
And where the Hudson Bay moved. So by that time, my grandfather wasn't a Hudson Bay manager anymore, because he passed on November 23rd, 1925 in Aklavik. So at the time, 34, Sidgwick was the Hudson Bay manager there. And from there, from the point, they moved to where the Northern Store is to this day.
Yeah. And it's still there.
It's still there.
Yeah.
But it's, in those times, they just grabbed wherever they wanted to move. And there was all kinds of graves along there where the Hudson Bay's Northern Stories and where the staff houses, all along through the hill there. There's grapes scattered all over.
Yeah.
We never pay attention to them because that's grapes.
Mhm.
Yeah, in the little hills, sometimes you just boxes made up out of coffin made out of logs.
Yeah.
So we don't bother with them. We just respect their rights, and
Yeah.
that's the way it was. And a lot of times, mainly on the banks of shores where you could see it. The old saying was, when I die, bury me close to the shore of the ocean, so I could see the people go by
Oh,
traveling.
how nice. Is that why they put the
Yes, that's
the graveyard
they
where
put
it
them.
is?
That's where they put them, on the beach or
Yeah.
on little mounds, and that's how they bury their people, because that's
Oh.
where they ask to be buried.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty neat. People did their whatever person wishes, and after the person's gone, and so
Yeah.
that's the way it's always been
Yeah.
with people up to. And they were sharing kind of people they were, as far as I'm concerned, in those times, the old people.
Yeah.
And as younger people came along, the life changes, like right now, to this
Yeah.
day, from my days to your days, it's all totally different, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, my days are gone.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed what I grew up with.
Yeah.
It's once in a lifetime that you grew up and learn all these life skills, what Inuvialuk is.
Yeah.
And remember that, you young people, we're the last ice age of the Inuvialuit.
The last ice age of the Inuvialuit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
We lived through it
Mhm.
like this, because you see when all these people come up here, specialists so-called, geologists, you name it, they always find that these fossils of all kinds of tropical animals. And this old man, now change my story, old man from Delta, he says, one day, listen, Atta, that means listen. He's telling, there's few of us telling the story. He says, long time ago we came, when it was the way phrase he uses, he says, there was no winter in those times. It's all summer, all around, that's what he said. All year round, the summer. And the ice came along. He said, one day it's going to come back. It's going to go back to the way it used to be. This old man never been to school in his life. And I said, how does he know all this astronomy and everything else? The way he was talking? And I thought, Jesus, brilliant. Being a kid, you know,
Yeah.
how much does he know? And he said, don't worry. He says, one of these times, maybe not my time, maybe third down generation, the weather's going to go back to the way it used to be at one time. And he said, it's going to be summer all year round. There'll be no more winters. That's what this old man was saying.
Wow. And you were just a child?
Yeah, I was just a child, but they tell you these things. And how would they know, tell you all this knowledge?
Yeah.
They had to know something. It had to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
So
So
you people should all, pardon?
I was going to say, so our people are always adapting.
Yeah, we're always adapting from life to you name it.
Yeah.
We're always been adaptable people. And there's no way out. We never complain, but we take it as it comes.
I like using this phrase. I once met a man. He was, we were just children when I met him.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember he was, he's Inuit from Goose Bay, Labrador.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just like 19, 20, and he said that the Inuit people in Canada are the fastest evolving people.
Mm-hmm.
Because we made contact last,
Yeah.
but we caught up
Mm-hmm.
to the way the rest of Canada was,
Mm-hmm.
the fastest evolving, and that's how he talked about it. So he was encouraging us young children
Mm-hmm.
to continue with our education.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he said that there's nothing that we can't do, going from living in igloos
Mm-hmm.
as nomads
Yeah.
to becoming educated
Mm-hmm.
and taking on leadership roles.
Yes.
Like in just a couple generations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the way my dad puts it is reach for the stars. The sky's the limit.
Yeah. Mhm.
If you want to learn anything, you can do it.
Mhm.
So young people out there, don't ever forget.
Yeah.
This is your world. This
Mhm.
is your modern world. But never forget that you're Inuvialuq.
Yeah.
And your language is so important.
So I've heard many stories from my Nanak of growing up and going to dances and drum dances and getting all gussied up in
Mhm.
dresses and hearing about her shoes. She always had shoes.
Yes, Nanny. I didn't know Nanny was a dancer.
Yeah.
So one time I was at my girlfriend's place in Inuvik, Elizabeth, and Kathleen Hansen says to me, "Your mother was a dancer." I said, "My mother? Nah, she can't be." She says, "Yeah, you ask your mom." By that time, Nanny came in,
Yeah.
"Mom, you dance?" Kathleen was saying that you're a dancer. She, "Gina Biba." She said, "That means, who said so?" Here Kathleen Hansen was sitting there. She said,
Yeah.
"Kathleen told me this." She just smiled. She said, "Yeah." She looked at my mom. She said she was a real dancer.
Yeah, that's funny.
In Herschel Island. That's where they said they all used to, she was young, gussied up and everything else, and let's go to dance. But my grandmother was so strict, She says, if a man asks you and you don't like the man to dance with, don't refuse. No use refusing. If you want to refuse, no use going to the dances.
Oh, I like that.
That's what she taught her daughters, She
Yeah.
was so strict.
Mm-hmm.
It means that, in other words, you don't want to go to dance, you just want to look at the boys. No.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mother. Sweet.
And when did you start? Because I know that you've traveled all over,
Mm-hmm.
and you have been doing translation
Mm-hmm.
for years and years and years.
Yes.
Yes. When did you first leave Tuck? Like when you left?
I left Tuck 59
59.
and spent a year in Aplavik.
Okay.
Yeah. Then to Herschel Island. That's where I met my American husband.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It was 1962.
Because I know, like, I grew up with all of my aunts and uncles,
Uh-huh.
my great aunts and uncles,
Uh-huh.
and not many left.
No.
No, you left and Auntie Emma
Mhm.
left for a little bit, but I never heard of other people traveling south. And you started traveling south.
Yes, I met this American. That's how we ended up in the U.S.
Oh. Yeah.
So it was my travels, and I'm not sorry for it.
Yeah.
I took my girls after I left them with my parents, and next following spring I went and picked them up. But then I went back to the States, and that's
Yeah.
where I live. Raised them, but I come back every year. Go
Mhm.
to Tunnganarniq and
Mm-hmm.
spend time hunting, if not working up here.
Yeah. And when did you start doing work for translating? And I want to call it archiving.
It was, what you want to call it?
Archiving.
Oh, well, that's okay, I guess. The H I am. Mom always said to me, go to church every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, don't be lazy to go to church.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to wonder why she's pushing us, to church.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, if a reverend coming from McClavic and they need an interpreter, you go ahead, try it. And that's how I started. I was 12, 13 years old when I started, when Canon Montgomery came in from McClavic and Bishop Marsh.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I started.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Translating.
Yeah.
They look around and they said, who can translate for me? So Mom was strict. If I refuse, you've had it. And that's the way, it was, parents were so strict in those days.
Yeah. And I asked you before if you plan on writing a book,
yes, I thought about it, and I've been going back and forth to Seattle. My son lives down there.
Yeah.
And so he's been taking the stories off me,
Mm-hmm.
and with this Corvette kind of stop you from going anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
I still like, if somebody wished to pick it up, I'd be glad to.
Yeah. I think that would be a good idea because as far as I know, you and Auntie Guatsi are probably the last few left that know all of Nanny's stories.
Last of the Mohicans.
because I'm, what, 4th generation from Nanny.
Uh-huh.
And I don't have a lot of stories. I have stories, but not as many as I know you would have. So I think that would be a really good idea.
Well, yes, on both sides. Nanny was always telling us stories.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since we were little girls,
Mm-hmm.
used to hear all these stories.
Yeah.
And then from my grandfather.
Yeah.
And then
What was your grandfather's name?
Lenny Glamasala,
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nanny's dad.
Yeah.
And my dad also.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lot of stories, but he must have been mischievous. But also a good hunter.
Yeah.
Hunter and trapper.
I have vague memories of Dad Charlie. Was he quiet?
Yes.
Yes, I remember him being a very quiet man.
He was very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not as quiet as you think he is when we're all alone,
Yeah.
When we all start talking.
Yeah.
Us girls, anyway, I guess that's what make him all start talking, because how mischievous we are when we get together. So
Yeah.
you kind of drag your parents into talking and laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never a dull moment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have 5 more minutes left. Do you think
It
that?
is so.
Yeah. Do you want to have one more story, maybe?
Yes. What would you like to hear?
I have so many things I would like to hear from you. Just because I really do enjoy listening to stories of our family. Maybe we can talk about, I know we talked about fishing before.
Fishing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, there used to be a lot of fishing done for harvesting.
Mm-hmm.
Herrings.
Yeah.
There was abundance of herrings. Everybody had dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So how else are you going to feed it? Feed the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
It was all herrings. By end of August to September, see people out there with 20-foot canoe. See them all over the beach. Few of bonfires here and there. I don't know what you call it, seining in other places, and we call it, you said a line of net, you drag the net, and drag it, tie the other line to the beach, and you start dragging the other one, a sweep net, they call it around here.
Yeah.
And at night, my dad and my mom and dad, and boys, and my sisters would go out. I'd babysit. Once in a while, maybe if I'm lucky, I'd go out. And sometimes one sweep, they would fill up, for example, 20-foot canoe of herrings.
Blue herring.
Blue herrings and Cisco herrings.
Oh, okay.
That's good quack.
Yeah.
And what my dad used to do was making a pit, fish pit, with logs. Good size, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, and quite high. And if you fill that up, you have a lot of feed for the dogs all year round.
Would he store them in the community?
No, it's for the family itself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because how else you gonna go through the winter when you don't have any other means of feeding your dogs? And that was only fishing was the herrings. There used to be so abundance of herrings, and it's not like it used to be before, since they had Canmar had the contract to duck Maguan, and he dredged the mouth of that where the boats coming in and out. That's where all the fish habitats were for herrings. Since they drilled that out, it's never any herrings anymore.
I was just going to say, I don't think there's much herring left.
No, well, there is, but once in a while they move along somewhere else, I guess. Because when they start spawning, their fish rows across the bay, where that channel comes in, used to be just right along the beach. Yeah. And fish at night, you could just hear them. If it's a calm night, you could just hear them just popping in the water. Yeah. And it was so nice. Like I said, I went a few times. To me, it was it's so enjoyable. But a lot of work. Once they hit the water end of the net to the ground on the other side, to the beach, then you have to start putting the fish into whatever they have with containers and into the fish pet. I tell you, all that fish is done, and the poor brothers and the sisters, I guess they all help Mom and Dad filling and with their grandkids who came along, probably Bambino and Blake. Yeah, the older ones, yes. And so they weren't left out. Anybody that's helpful was there. And that's the way it's always been. Yeah. People of Tuck were, in my growing days, they were very kind people and knew how to share. Yeah. Like my dad, at one time, he came home with 2 moose and a lot of whitefish from Nallo. And I was watching him, and a lot of people were coming, elderly people. And I was watching, he was giving them away, giving them a piece of meat and fish. And I asked my dad, why are you giving those people fish and meat? Well, he said, they're in Bonigay, they have nothing to eat, so you have to share what you get. Yeah. And that's the way they were. And so come people are, to this day, I guess they are friendly, the people of Tuck. Yeah. except for the so-called the young ones, but they're good to know.
Yeah.
If they get mad at me, I say, I'm sorry, young ones.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For coming on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really, really happy that we managed to work this out.
Okay.
Yes.
And I hope it turns out.
I think it will.
I would like to see it,
Yes, I can show it to you after we're done.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
A whole hour though? Not just in person. I'll ask the video person or whatever camera person, how did it turn out?
Okay. Thank you for tuning in to the Tunnganarniq show, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay, ilan nilo.
Ilan
See you
nilo,
all.
yes.
Bye.